quarters of the world displaced. The tradition gathered in a section before last refer to various epochs. Actually, Herodotus and Mela say that according to Egyptian annals, the reversal of the west and east recurred. The sun rose in the west, then in the east, once more in the west, and again in the east. Was the cosmic catastrophe that terminated a world age in the days of the fall of the Middle Kingdom and of the Exodus. One of these occasions. And did the earth change the direction of its rotation at that time? If we cannot assert this much, we can at least maintain that the earth did not remain on the same orbit, nor did its poles stay in their places, nor was the direction of the axis the same as before. The position of the globe and its course were not settled when the earth first came into contact with the onrushing comet. In Plato's terms, already partly quoted, the motion of the earth was changed by blocking of the course, and went through shaking of the revolutions and the disruptures of every possible kind, so that the position of the earth became at one time reversed, at another oblique, and again upside down, and it wandered every way in all 6 directions. The Talmud and other ancient rabbinical sources tell of great disturbances in the solar movement at the time of the Exodus, and the passage of the sea, and the law-giving. In old Midrashim, it is repeatedly narrated that 4 times the sun was forced out of its course in the few weeks between the day of the Exodus and the day of the law-giving. The prolonged darkness and the prolonged day in the Far East, the earth shock, i.e. the 9th and 10th plagues, and the world conflagration were the result of these disturbances in the motion of the earth. A few days later, we follow the biblical narration. Immediately before the hurricane changed its direction, the pillar of the cloud went from before their faces and stood behind them. This means that the column of fire and smoke turned about and appeared from the opposite direction. Mountainous tides uncovered the bottom of the sea. A spark sprang between 2 celestial bodies, and at the turning of the morning, the tides fell in a cataclysmic avalanche. The Midrashim speak of disturbance in the solar movement on the day of the passage. The sun did not proceed on its course. On that day, according to the Psalms, the earth feared and was still. It is possible that Amos 8:8-9 is reviving the memory of this event when he mentions the flood of Egypt. At the time, the earth was cast out of the sea, and dry land was swallowed by the sea, and the sun was brought down at noon, although, as I show later on, Amos might have referred to a cosmic catastrophe of a more recent date. Law-giving, when the worlds collided again, was, according to numerous rabbinical sources, a day of unusual length. The motion of the sun was disturbed on this occasion, and generally in days and months allowed the passage, the gloom, the heavy and charged clouds, the lightning, and the hurricanes, aside from the devastation by earthquake and the flood, made observation very difficult, if not possible. They walk on in darkness. All of the foundations of the earth are out of course. Psalms 82:5. It is a metaphor used by the psalmists. The papyrus Ippawur, which says the earth churned over like a potter's wheel and the earth is upside down, was written by an eyewitness of the plagues and the Exodus. The change is described also in the words of another papyrus, Harris, which I have quoted once before. The south becomes north, and the earth turns over. Whether there is a complete reversal of the cardinal points as a result of the cosmic catastrophe of the days of the Exodus, or only a substantial shift, is a problem not solved here. The answer was not apparent, even to contemporaries, at least for a number of decades. In the gloom that endured for a generation, observations were impossible and very difficult. When the light began to break through, the Kalevala relates that dreaded shades enveloped the earth, and the sun occasionally steps from his accustomed path. Then Yuko Jupiter struck fire from the sun to the light, and a new sun and a new moon and a new world age began. In Völuspá, poetic Edda of the Icelanders, we read, "No one she, the sun, had where her home should be. The moon knew not what was his. The stars knew not where their stations were. Then the gods set order among the heavenly bodies." The Aztecs related, there had been no sun in existence for many years. The chiefs began to peer through the gloom in all directions for the expected light, and to make bets as to what part of heaven he, the sun, should first appear in. Some said here, and some said there, but when the sun rose, they were all proving wrong. But for one of them had fixed upon the east. Similarly, the Mayan legend tells that it was not known from where the new sun would appear. They looked in all directions, but they were unable to say where the sun would rise. Some thought it would take place in the north, and their glances were turned in that direction. Others thought it would be in the south. Actually, their guesses included all directions, because the dawn shone all around. Some, however, fixed their attention on the Orient and maintained that the sun would come from there. It was their opinion that proved to be correct. According to the Compendium of Wang Xixing, 1526 to 1590, and Puan, after the chaos when heaven and earth had just separated, that is, when the great mass of cloud just lifted from the earth, that the heaven showed its face. In the Midrashim, it is said that during the wandering in the desert, the Israelites did not see the face of the sun because of the clouds. They were unable to orient themselves on their march. The expression repeatedly used in the books of Numbers and Joshua, the east of to the sun rising, is not tautology, but a definition which, by the way, testifies to ancient origins of the literary materials that served as sources for these books. It is an expression that has its counterpart in the Egyptian, the west, which is at the sun setting. The cosmological allegory of the Greeks has Zeus rushing on his way to engage Typhon in combat, steal Europa, Erev, the evening land, and carry her to the west. Arabia, also Erev, kept its name, the evening land, though it lies to the east of the centers of civilization, the Egypt, Palestine, Greece. Eusebius, one of the fathers of the church, assigned the Zeus-Europa episode to the time of Moses and the Deucalion flood, and Augustine wrote that Europa was carried by the king of Crete to his island in the west, betwixt the departure of Israel out of Egypt and the death of Joshua. The Greeks, like other peoples, spoke of the reversal of the quarters of the earth, and not merely in allegories, but in literal terms. The reversal of the earth's rotation, referred to the written and oral sources of many peoples, suggests the relation of one of these events to the cataclysm of the day of the Exodus. Like the quoted passage from Visuddhimagga, the Buddhist text, the cited tradition of the Kaxinawa tribe in western Brazil, the versions of the tribes and peoples of all 5 continents include the same elements familiar to us from the book of Exodus: lightning and the bursting of heaven, which caused the earth to be turned upside down, or heaven and earth to change places. On the Andaman Islands, the natives are afraid that a natural catastrophe will cause the world to turn over. In Greenland, also, the Eskimos fear that the earth will turn over. Curiously enough, the cause of such perturbation is revealed in beliefs like that of the people of Flanders in Belgium. Thus we read in Menin, Flanders, the peasants say, on seeing a comet, the sky is going to fall, the earth is turning over. Changes in the times and the seasons. Many agents collaborated to change the climate. Insolation was impaired by heavy clouds of dust, and the radiation of the heat from the earth was equally hindered. Heat was generated by the earth's contacts with another celestial body. The earth was removed to an orbit further from the sun. The polar regions were displaced, oceans and seas evaporated, and the vapors precipitated as snow on the new polar regions. In the higher latitudes, in a long fimbul winter, and formed new ice sheets. The axis on which the earth rotated pointed in a different direction, and the order of the seasons was disturbed. Spring follows winter, and fall follows summer, because the earth rotates on an axis inclined toward the plane of its revolution around the sun. Should this axis become perpendicular to the plane, there would be no seasons on earth. Should it change its direction, the seasons would change their intensity and their order. The Egyptian papyrus known as Papyrus Anastasi IV contains a complaint about the gloom and the absence of solar light. It says also, "The winter has come, as instead of summer, the months are reversed, and the hours are disordered. The breath of heaven is out of harmony. The 4 seasons do not observe their proper times." We read in the text of Taoism, in the historical memoirs of Sima Tizim, as in the annals of the Shu King, which we have already quoted. It is said that the Emperor Yahu sent astronomers to the Valley of Obscurity and to the Sombre residence to observe the new movements of the sun and of the moon, and the syzygies, or the orbital points of the conjunction, also to investigate and to inform the people of the order of the seasons.
It is also said that Yahoo introduced a calendar reform. He brought the seasons into accord with the observations, he did the same with the months, and he corrected the days. Plutarch gives the following description of a derangement of seasons: the thickened air concealed the heaven from view, and the stars were confused with a disorderly huddle of fire and moisture and violent flux ions of winds. The sun was not fixed to an unwandering and certain course, so as to distinguish Orient and Occident, nor did he bring back the seasons in order. In another work of his, Plutarch ascribes these changes to Typhon, the destructive, diseased and disorderly, who caused abnormal seasons and temperatures. It is characteristic that in the written traditions of the peoples of antiquity the disorder of the seasons is directly connected with the derangement and the motion of the heavenly bodies. The oral traditions of primitive peoples in various parts of the world also retain memories of this change in the movement of the heavenly bodies, the seasons, the flow of time, during a period when darkness enveloped the world. As an example, I quote the tradition of the Orabi in Arizona. They say that the firmament hung low and the world was dark, and no sun, no moon, nor stars were seen. The people murmured because of the darkness and the cold. Then the planet god Makhido appointed times, and seasons, and ways for the heavenly bodies. Among the Incas, the guiding power in regulating the seasons and the courses of the heavenly bodies were Irikapcha. The sun, the moon, the day, the night, spring, winter, is not ordained in vain by the Irikapcha. 73 The American sources, which speak of a world colored red, of a rain of fire, of world conflagration, of new rising mountains, of frightening portents in the sky, of a 25-year gloom, imply also that the order of the seasons was altered at that epoch. The astronomers and geologists whose concern is all this should judge of the causes which could affect the derangement of the day and could cover the earth with tenebrosity, wrote a clergyman who spent many years in Mexico and in the libraries of the Old World which store ancient manuscripts of the Mayas and works of early Indian and Spanish authors about them. It did not occur to him that the biblical narrative of the time of the Exodus contains the same elements. With the end of the Middle Kingdom in Egypt, when the Israelites left that country, the old order of seasons came to an end and a new world age began. The fourth book of Ezra, which borrows from some earlier sources, refers to the end of the seasons in these words, I sent him Moses and led my people out of Egypt, and brought them to
Mount Sinai, and held him by me for many days. I told him many wondrous things, showed him the secrets of the times, declared to him the end of the seasons. Because of various simultaneous changes in the movement of the earth and the moon, and because observation of the sky was hindered when it was hidden in smoke in the clouds, the calendar could not be correctly computed. The changed lengths of the year, the month, of the day required prolonged, unobstructed observation. The words of the Midrashim that Moses was unable to understand the new calendar refer to this situation, the secrets of the calendar, Sudhavara, or more precisely, the secret of the transition from one time reckoning to another, was revealed to Moses, but he had difficulty in comprehending it. Moreover, it is said in rabbinical sources that in the time of Moses, the course of the heavenly bodies became confounded. The month of the Exodus, which occurred in the spring, became the first month of the year. This month shall be unto you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Thus, the strange situation was created in the Jewish calendar that the new year is observed in the 7th month of the year. The beginning of the calendar year was moved to a point about half a year away from the new year in the autumn. With the fall of the Middle Kingdom and the Exodus, one of the great world ages came to its end. The 4 quarters of the world were displaced, and neither the orbit nor the poles, nor probably the direction of the rotation remained the same. The calendar had to be adjusted anew. The astronomical values of the year and the day could not be the same before and after an upheaval in which, as the quoted papyrus Anastasi IV says, the months were reversed and the hours disordered. The length of the year during the Middle Kingdom is not known for any contemporaneous document. Because in the pyramid text dating from the Old Kingdom, there is mention of 5 days. It was erroneously concluded that in that period, a year of 365 days was already known.